Hello creatives, welcome back to my channel. Today we are going to continue the Zodiac series with the next one, Aries. I started with a sphere tool, just kicking this off right now to make the base of the ram head and also the horns. The ram is the symbol for Aries, and here I'm going to be using the shape builder tool once I have all the spheres in place, and I'm going to be making the horns out of these circles here that I laid down, and step by step, and then I'm going to tweak them using the pen tool for any points that are out of place, and I'm also going to be using the white direct selection tool to reposition them into place so that they make sense visually. And the same goes for the other side too. I'm going to just duplicate those steps with the shape builder tool and the pen tool and white direct selection tool, just so that you can start to see the horns. And now that they are starting to take shape, I am going to then make the bottom side of the horns. And by doing that, I'm going to be taking two circles and overlay them offset. That way they're not one directly over the other. And then I'm going to shape build tool the shapes together and set them in place behind the horns, so now that the horns look more thicker, more pronounced. And that is going to be what the horns shape is. I'm going to make sure that the horns are set behind the head. Well, actually, not behind. Actually in front of, but the back of the horn is going to be set behind the front of the horn. You get it. And now I'm also going to be doing the same to the other side, just doing the exact same setup there. And now let's continue to touch up anything that's out of sorts with the white direct selection tool. It's very easy to manipulate the points that way with that tool. And I'm also going to make sure that everything is set in order visually, so that things that are in front actually visually look like they're in front, and same with behind. Next, we're going to work on the eyes. Let's start with two circles for each eye's iris, which is the very center, and then the pupil with where the color of the eye goes. Then we're going to place down two ovals for each eye shape, and I'm going to be tweaking those ovals to make them look more almond shaped. I'm not really sure what shape actually ram eyes are, but I'm just going to assume almond. Then I'm going to use a rounded rectangle tool to make the rest of the pupils for the ram's eyes, because rams and goats have a pupil that is unique where they can almost see 360 degrees, which is kind of crazy. But I filled it with black like all pupils and added light highlight. Next, I decided to move on to the nose by using three thin ovals and the shape builder tool to form them together in the shape of kind of like a T, pretty much. I don't know, I thought it looked kind of cute that way. Then I created the upper lip with the pen tool, and I increased the stroke so that it gives it more of a outline. Then I decided to move on to give it more of a definition for the nose. I duplicated that nose shape, and then I set that behind, and then let's just make it gray for now. I might change that later and just set it in place. Next, I felt that the face needed more of a definition, so I used the pen tool to create a line around the eye and going down the face around the mouth part to emphasize the contour of the face. And just to give it more definition, I then duplicated that line onto the other side of the face. And this kind of coincidentally resembles the symbol of the ram, so I ended up coloring that in red to make it more intense. And I used that same color for the eyes for Aries, because that is a color for Aries, which is red. For some reason, it just seemed way too intense, so I decided just to put a little gradient on it to soften it up. I then moved on to use a freeform gradient for the more subtle colors for Aries on the head and face, which the head and face I decided to make more of like sand colors, just so it's not so harsh and intense everywhere. I may switch up these colors later, but that's what they are for now. And then for that face line I put in, those contours, I decided to use the width tool to enhance the definition of those lines, making it skinnier in places and wider in others as it goes down the face. And then I outlined that stroke because that is just created with the pen tool. It is just a stroke, so I outline the stroke to create it as a shape so that I can then recolor it and form it however I want. I then decided to tweak the colors in the face gradient again, and I wanted to then move on to the horns because we kind of ignored them since we created them. So I just decided to fill them in with a light sand color for the top and then a darker, more saturated sand color for the bottom of the horns. And from there, I did that for both sides. From there, let's go ahead and move on back to the nose just to soften up the area. Let's duplicate that nose shape and then set that shape behind. And then let's go ahead and blend those shapes together so that it softens up that little area there. I then decided to go to the horns and add a freeform gradient to them because I like the freeform gradient and I wanted to give it more realism with more shadow and also more light in those areas by adding the light sand colors, and then I chose a deep brown color and then also a less saturated brown color and just played around with it until I felt it looked more believable. And I think it does look more believable at this moment as I'm tweaking it. I'm just going with the flow here. Sand in lighter sand colors are part of the Aries. They're usually more of red colors, sand, blood red, scarlet, flaming orange. So I kind of steered away from the orange a little bit here. But the eyes, to me, seemed a bit too harsh, so let's go ahead and give them some eyelids. I used the Shape Builder tool along with 2 ovals. That I overlaid the ovals and offset them and used the Shape Builder tool to build the shape of an eyelid, and then I tweaked them into place. I also put the eyelid fill color as the dark brown, and from there I also duplicated that, and then I decided that it needs a little bit of highlight on the eyelids to make them more believable, so I added that with a light sand color. And we've pretty much ignored the Aries title so far, so let's go ahead and choose an intense font. I chose Copperplate here, and I centered it and made its fill color white. But it seemed a little bit hard to read, so let's go ahead and duplicate the title and set that behind. Let's fill it with red for now. Oh, you know what? Actually, let's blend that because it's a little too harsh with the red outline. So we'll blend it. I moved on to the other horn to give that one more of a gradient as well, just to make everything even. And from there, let's go ahead and let's go back to the head. I'm not really liking the way the colors are set up here, so let's go ahead and tweak that gradient. You can edit the freeform gradient whenever you choose. It's very easy to. It's just a click of a button. So let's just take away some of the drama from the face. It seems a little too dark and too harsh. You know what's missing from this? Ears. So let's make some. So let's go ahead and choose an oval and a small circle to shape build the shape of the ear, kind of like how a goat or a ram's ear would look. And then let's go ahead and choose another smaller oval to make the inner ear. I'm going to fill that with a soft pink color that I chose. And then let's go ahead and add that same gradient to the ear with the same colors from the face and the head. And then I'm going to put everything into place and increase the stroke on the ear so that it stands out. Let's duplicate that ear just like we would so it has an ear on both sides and set that into place and set it behind everything. And now let's move on back to the nose now that everything is set in place and it's looking pretty good all together as one. I kind of want to soften up the nose even more, so instead of just leaving the nose portion by itself, let's go ahead and blend that into the 2 shapes that are behind it by just selecting all of them and then just pressing blend, and that softens that right up. Next, let's go ahead and move on to the constellation. I just used some circles to create the constellation itself. I kept it white because, you know, they're stars, basically, and I used the pen tool to connect them all with a stroke. I then applied an outer glow to all of the circles and the strokes so that it actually looks like it's glowing like a constellation would. It kind of made it more celestial in a way using that. And then I also added stars and applied an inner and outer glow to those as well. and that is Aries. I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and please leave a comment down below of what you think of this series so far, and I really enjoyed illustrating with you guys today. I'll see you soon, creatives.